Okay, let's get started before he shows up.
Uh-huh.
All right.
Yes.
So this is number 2. We were just chatting in our little coffee break time. This sparked in Guy's imagination a way to actually advise people how to read the Bible. And I know that would probably leave a lot of people dry, like, why do I want to study the Bible? Which is the success of modern propaganda. Because, as I've been learning, the Bible is actually a very practical book.
Extremely, yeah.
Yeah, and it has everything you'd ever want to know about any particular issue. There's guidance there. We mentioned Dershowitz had taken the first 5 books and showed how it evolved into a moral code.
Well, actually, as you and I talked about before, the moral code during the time the Constitution Declaration were formed was basically a biblical moral code.
Oh, yes.
You know, because the founding fathers were challenged about the fact they were using biblical principles, and Franklin, who was a deist, not a Christian, was one of the ones that defended doing that, because he said basing the country on biblical principles is not tantamount to a state religion.
Yes.
So,
And I'm going to mention a case. This is a New York State case from not that long ago. Well, I don't know what year it is. Before my time, but in court there was a case coming up, and a witness was called, and the question was raised that how can this person take an oath, not being an avowed atheist. So it turned out he was an avowed atheist, and at that time, and it's not that long ago, the judge would not listen to his testimony, and he was not permitted to give testimony, because if you're an atheist, you cannot give an oath. And that's the oath concept that I grew up with.
yeah.
So an oath is not putting your hands in the air and saying, yes, I do, or something. It's not mechanical.
But it has degenerated to that in the modern political arena.
And I was going to mention, I did a case where I was explaining to the voir dire, the potential jurors, that what we were doing is we're going to do a trial, blah, 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 and people are going to take an oath, and then you know what that means? That means there's swearing before God,
Yeah.
and putting their souls on the line. Objection! And the objection was sustained, and I was not permitted to define what an oath is according to what the definition of an oath is.
I remember you telling me that, yeah.
And this is where our culture is. That's why I raised that particular issue. We have no oath. Look at James Comey. Look at all these people. They just lie.
Yeah, and they believe exactly what you just said they shouldn't believe, namely, you just raise your hand and repeat words. You don't mean anything by it, you know.
Right.
I remember when I was inducted into the military, I had to raise my hand and take an oath, and I took that so seriously. I realized that if I were assigned to a combat zone, that I might have to give my life to defend what I said in that oath, you know.
And now, this probably sounds all academic to people up there too. We got 2 cameras. But this is not academic. Put everything aside, and you're living in your neighborhood, and there's 2 people who have stores. One person will just lie through his teeth to make a sale. The other person is a church-going person and will not, and has shown that he will not lie to you to purchase something to sell something to you. Where are you going to go? And if a person lies to you once, why would you ever listen to them again?
Yeah.
This is where the moral code comes in. If they lie to you once, they'll lie to you 100 times, and in fact, they'll become president of the United States lying to you. And you'll vote for them because why? Because it's your tribe. This is the basic logic behind our politics today. My tribe wants to be in charge. My guy, oh sure, he's a liar. And he looks you right in the face and lies to you, but he's my guy. All right. This is not some sort of abstract concept we're dealing with. This is our lives.
Yeah, and you might be asking as you're watching us discuss this, I thought this was about Aristotle's Nicomachean on ethics. I said, it's exactly what it's about.
Yeah.
What he's talking about there is what Aristotle would have been concerned about, that you have a moral code that is based on natural law, and that it impacts every area of your life. And your responsibility is to constantly be trying to draw in those two extremes to that medium that will bring you happiness in your life. By the way, you can't have genuine happiness without integrity anyway.
That's interesting. Got any more ideas on that?
Oh, sure, yeah. But Aristotle is so amazing because you can take what Aristotle said and you can bring it right into the same biblical perspective, you know. And I think probably if our observers are really interested in a personal study, they might get a copy of the Nicomachean Ethics if they're Christians, and they might go to the book of Proverbs. And if you want to do an interesting Bible study, you take the biblical proverb and try to match it to one of the things that Aristotle says. This is based on a principle that I was taught by a philosophy teacher years ago, and that is that all truth is God's truth. So if Aristotle discovers some truth, Plato discovers some truth, if I discover some truth, you discover some truth, and it doesn't violate the Bible, all truth is God's truth.
Of course, this raises Gene's favorite question: what is truth?
Sure. Well, Pilate also had that same question when he asked Jesus.
Oh, really? So he's a good
Yes,
guy.
he asked Jesus, he said, what is truth?
Yeah. And I guess we'll get into that more. But as you go through your day, think about what is your truth? What is truth? Guy actually believes, I'm saying this like it's a bad thing, Guy believes that the prescriptions of the Bible are truth.
Mm-hmm.
Prescriptions? Proscriptions.
Scriptures, prescript, yeah, sure.
Prescriptions, something like that. E or no, it is a truth, but he believes that from his experience and his study, and I guess that's it. And you believe that that is a divine book, and you're getting divine principles.
Mm-hmm.
That's his truth.
I never had anything that I practiced in the Bible be incorrect.
Yeah. And they're like, I come from a more, poor scientific, legalistic system where, to me, outside of what Guy's saying, there is no truth. Other than what Descartes would say is that because I can think, therefore I know for a fact that I can think. Other than that, everything else is experience.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, that's true. So when people say it's true that this and the government said that, there's no truth. If you want to go through a life where there's no truth, God bless you, because
Mm-hmm.
it's going to be awful. You're going to be living in your family, your tribe, and a bigger tribe. And it has absolutely nothing to do with the community as you know it. Your community cannot survive without an understanding of an ethics, which we'll call a truth. We'll call that a truth. But there are different kinds of truth. Aristotle began science, where he found knowledge is a result of cause and effect. It's a knowledge, all right? That's a kind of truth, but the cause and effect experiment could be wrong, so it's not the truth. So what is the truth? I'm gonna go back to my compass example. Is that when you have a compass, you can have true north, true northeast, true whatever. It doesn't matter. It could be true where you're heading direction, but if your compass is defective and you're not going true north, you're going somewhere else, and you will absolutely never arrive at where you're supposed to go. You'll be wandering around the ocean.
And that's what the founding fathers accepted. And I think all the philosophers we've been talking about would agree with that. They might not all agree on what the compass is, but they all would agree that you had to have one.
Yes. And I guess my interesting point for this particular episode is that this is not a course in academic history of philosophy where you name words and you try to remember what they are for the test. This is everyday knowledge. That's what the Greeks were talking about. They were talking about everyday knowledge. Socrates had conversations, and Plato, and it's not knowing the right word to use. Like we were using empirical, categorical imperative.
Mm-hmm.
As Kant.
Immanuel Kant.
Yeah. It's just something obvious that you'll understand when we get there. You don't have to know the words, and anybody who hides behind words is hiding behind jargon. which is a sure sign of an intellectual weakness.
Wow, good.
Ooh.
Yeah.
No, I immediately distrust anyone who starts a conversation with their academic credentials. They, oh, I went to Harvard. When I was at Harvard, we talked about they're hiding.
Mhm.
They're hiding behind jargon. And if it can't, yes,
Did you see recently where the graduates at Harvard applauded when the speaker said that we should do away with assault weapons?
No, handguns.
Well, they originally said
Oh,
assault
yeah,
weapons, and when he said that,
She,
then they
she,
all
she.
huh?
It's a she.
They all applauded. And what I got to thinking about with that is, I wonder if you were to go to all of these so-called Harvard graduates and ask them to define an assault weapon,
No.
if they could do it, and the answer is no. Biden could even define one.
Yeah.
He called a semi-automatic gun an assault weapon. It's not an assault weapon. When I was in high school, we took our semi-automatic 22s to high school with the ammunition, and then we went to a firing range and we were taught gun safety and how to sight in our weapons, you know. So these guys don't have any idea what's going on.
And as all things are part of the same one, his example he just raised from a long time ago, he went to a school, public school?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but it was Christian based. And they carried their guns to school to learn how to use them.
Yeah.
And today we're whining about bullying and people, mentally ill people getting guns, which is suspicious by itself, and going around shooting people because they have no moral code. To a great extent, at least in my opinion, psychological damage is a lack of a moral code.
Yeah, it is. Did you see Biden's famous statement where he demonstrated his lack of understanding of the Constitution? I mean, he's done it so many times, but this was amazing. He said, the Second Amendment is not absolute. And of course it is absolute. The Second Amendment, for example, if you take the Second Amendment literally, which we no longer do, the fact that I had to go through a process to get my pistol permit for Washington County is an infringement on my right to firearms, okay? So every place you go, every county, every state, and the federal government, anytime they put a restriction on what you can do to get a firearm, that's an infringement on the Second Amendment and violates the absolute standard that the right to bear arms shall not be infringed.
And again, we're back to a code. We have the Bill of Rights.
Right.
And this all everything segues together. The Bill of Rights is not the granting of rights to the citizens by the government. The people would not vote for the government unless those first 10 amendments were added as a way to stop the state because they'd seen the tyranny of England and France.
Mm-hmm.
So this is our right. The government has nothing to do with it.
Mm-hmm.
And how does it change? Subversion over the years and court rulings.
Mm-hmm.
You get enough judges in, and you subvert the code, and you have no code. And what do you have? You have people shooting each other. You have riots in the street. Like normal people are baffled by how you can have a New York City with people rioting in the streets, smashing glass windows, and it's completely alien to them. But it's not alien to somebody who either has a moral code or has a moral code that permits this.
Mm-hmm.
in the furtherance of taking control. All right.
And you say, so we were talking today too about the second question, why am I here? What is my purpose in life? And this all fits because according to the Aristotelian golden mean, your purpose for being here is to be able to bring the extremes all to that center place and have some type of enjoyment of life. Even the philosophers realized you weren't here on the earth forever. So if you're going to have any type of enjoyment or happiness or anything, you can't be in either one of these two extremes, Aristotle said. Plato said you've got to recognize, that you are you were sourced out by the one, he called it, Plotinus called it the Great Spirit. And we come from him, and he doesn't want us to be unhappy. He doesn't want us to be frustrated. He wants us to enjoy life. So the purpose of life is to find that position of moderation and live it to the best that you can in this life. Paul went a little bit farther in Philippians. From death row in Rome, Nero was going to execute him for his faith. And Paul said in Philippians chapter 1, he said, if I live, he said, that's to your benefit to Philippi, because I can come back and continue to minister to you. But he said, if I die, then I'm going to be absent and present with the Lord. So he said, whether I live or whether I die, I want to make sure I glorify the Lord. So his position on purpose was that we should glorify the Lord by living that particular standard. But like you say, our modern politicians no longer want to accept that kind of thing.
Yes. Something that comes to mind, I think this fits, is that George Lucas did Star Wars. Is there a Star Wars? I'm in his church meeting room here. I'm just looking for a Star Wars thing. No, nothing's here. So the Force. Everybody knows what the Force is, and the Force is actually a construct that Lucas came up with because he met with I guess it would be a philosopher who understood the Tao. So the Force is the Tao. So you already know about natural law and about the Tao, and now you're going to see how it all fits together into Aristotle, into the Bible, into Buddhist tradition, and there's a mean. And would it be correct to say that there's a mean because on each side is an emotion?
Yeah, emotion. I think if you get away from the central, then what you have is emotion on either side.
Yeah, so
if you look at the philosophers, that golden mean, or that middle position, or even with Paul and moderation, that was something that was related to your moral standard, not to your feelings. You know, how you acted and everything.
yes, okay. So you stick to the middle road, which is an understanding that you want to avoid emotional reactions and stick to and aim for the code and make sure your compass is working and go toward the true north.
Right.
And emotions are. Oh, I have lots of theories, and
you could save those for
I'll save
number
it for next
three.
time. But to me, emotions are an extension of the fight or flight reflex of a mammal. All right. You have fight, you flight. So you hear a noise in the forest, you either turn and fight or you run like hell. That's what a mammal does. Emotions, on an abstract level, is where the mammalian reaction transcends the animal and goes into the intellectual and becomes an intellectual fight or flight, or attraction. You also have attraction. So you have to get control of the abstract reflex. No, that'd be a reaction. Reflexes are animal, mammal things, and reactions are humans. But any emotion that we have, you got to stop and count to 10, just like they tell you in the movies, and calm down and find out what it is you're talking about and what moral code to apply.
Right, that would be your compass. Yes.
So
right.
Are we done with number 2?
Yeah, and we invite you to number 3.
Yes.
Okay, thank you for tuning in.
Okay. And goodbye. All right. I think that's enough.